Hey guys, this is the story of the $9 billion scam. There is no shortage of startups in Silicon Valley. In an era of crowdfunded companies, you're never completely sure if a startup will even exist long enough to deliver its product. But some companies, such as Uber and Airbnb, are able to break through and completely revolutionize their respective industries. Now for the healthcare industry, that company was Theranos. Not to be confused with Thanos. Theranos. Well, I guess it kind of makes sense. They like snapped their fingers and like billions of dollars disappeared.
You're not wrong.
Theranos was founded in 2004 by Elizabeth Holmes, a 19-year-old Stanford dropout who managed to convince her parents that they should spend her tuition money on her company instead. I need parents like that. The company's original name was Real-Time Cures, but I guess that wasn't startup-y enough, so instead it was changed to Theranos, a combination of therapy and diagnosis. It was founded with the goal of running multiple blood tests with an extremely small sample of around 25 to 50 microliters, roughly 1,000 times less than traditional vials. Now I hate getting my blood drawn, so I'm all for that, right? By utilizing a technology called Lab on a Chip, the readings from a single drop of blood could be sent wirelessly to one of Theranos' proprietary testing machines, the Edison. Edisons were capable of running multiple tests at a time, anything from a simple cholesterol reading to a much more complex operation like a cancer screening. Now because all of the tests were being done simultaneously, they could be done at a fraction of the cost compared to a typical lab where each test required an entirely dedicated vial of a patient's blood. Nuh-uh. No thanks. I'll pass on that. The idea was immediately popular, and it attracted high-profile investors, including Henry Kissinger, Rupert Murdoch, and Betsy DeVos. Now with her foundation built, Holmes spent the next decade developing the technology and securing hundreds of millions of dollars from other VC firms as well. After a few small-scale trials with independent labs, Theranos officially launched to the public in 2013 via its website. Almost immediately, it partnered with Walgreens to put machines on every street corner. Now Theranos would become the lab work provider for a number of different insurers, AmeriHealth, Caritas, and Capital Blue Cross, and they were awarded the Bioscience Company of the Year by AskBio. This all sounds very impressive. At that point, the company was worth an estimated $9 billion, more than both Uber as well as Airbnb. Now as Holmes held a 50% stake in the company, that in turn made her a multi-billionaire. Not bad for someone under 30. I mean, you're not a multi-billionaire yet, right?
You signed my paycheck, so you know I'm not.
There was just one problem. The Edison machines didn't actually work. In the 10 years that it had been operating, Theranos never submitted the technology to any medical journals for peer review. Whenever she was questioned on how the technology works, Holmes would give intentionally vague responses, like, a chemistry is performed so that a chemical reaction occurs and generates a signal from the chemical interaction with the sample, which is translated into a result. That's not science talk. That's like me trying to explain how to make videos. It's like, oh, how do you do YouTube? Well, you start with the YouTube juice and you pour it into the YouTube bucket and then a video comes out and then this happens. Things started to fall apart for Holmes after a 2015 Wall Street Journal article questioned the authenticity of Theranos, which resulted in the SEC finally stepping in to investigate. Now eventually, Theranos admitted that only 1% of the results from the Edisons were accurate, and arguably even worse, they'd been using commercially available blood testing machines all along. You know, what they were trying to really replace. Now the house of cards really began to fall apart from there. Holmes had claimed that Theranos' annual revenue was around $100 million, when in reality it was 1,000 times less. Yes, Theranos' annual revenue was only $100,000, and just to be clear, that's revenue, not profit. So by 2015, they were hemorrhaging $9 to $10 million per month. Remember how expensive that traditional blood testing was? Oops. So now you're probably wondering, how did Holmes grow her company with a product that didn't even exist? During the 10 or so years that Theranos was active, Holmes would get new investors to buy out the older, more impatient investors. Now some were willing to wait because Theranos had the potential to shake up the entire healthcare system and make them a ton of money in the process. And while typically a medical equipment manufacturer would sell machines like Theranos' Edison to labs and clinics, Holmes made sure to keep the technology in-house. Basically, she not only covered up the massive and nefarious scam that her company was pulling, but she also guaranteed that if she did manage to make her non-existent Edison machine a reality, she'd be able to retain a monopoly on the technology and keep that sweet, sweet VC money along the way. Naturally, once Holmes was caught, she was sued by roughly everyone. The SEC brought civil charges down on her, but she managed to settle with them outside of court in a move which resulted in her paying a $500,000 fine. But you know, she was also barred from serving as a director or officer of a public company for the next 10 years. If that wasn't enough, she's also still awaiting a criminal trial for committing fraud on an astronomical scale. If you enjoyed, definitely be sure to check out some other episodes, including our one all about scooter companies and how they're currently making billions of dollars. And if you enjoyed this, definitely be sure to subscribe to the channel. Otherwise, Matt won't be able to make rent this month. That was way too serious.
Wow.
That was much more on the nose than I intended it to be.
Yeah.
If you don't subscribe, Matt's not gonna eat today.
Fact. Those are all scarily true.